So you need to break away from outdated legacy systems and embark on a transformation journey. But where do you start? Maybe you're hesitant to let go of the familiar because of the risks involved. Maybe you're weighing the classic build versus buy versus wait debate, all while evaluating SaaS, the cloud, and on-prem options. Maybe you've got analysis paralysis. If these questions are on your mind, you need a transformation blueprint, a guide to help you navigate the complexities of digital evolution. Joining me today are Scott Wiest, VP and CTO for Global Sales at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and Greg Rhoades, CTO at Converge. With extensive experience helping organizations modernize their IT strategies, they bring unique insights into what it takes to navigate digital transformation. We'll break down the key steps to executing a transformation, the common roadblocks along the way, and how to lay a strong foundation for long-term success. Can you start introducing yourself and share insights into your current role? Why don't we start with you, Scott?
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Wiest. I'm the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Global Sales at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and also an HPE Fellow. And very sincere pleasure to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Rhoades, Greg?
Thanks, Jonathan. Good to be with you. My name is Greg Rhoades. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Converge. And, my role involves a cross-functional team of consultants and strategists and technologists. And our goal is to build and develop Converge products, services, and solutions. And the primary goal there is helping our customers with their most strategic initiatives.
The last several years, right, we've seen so many things change. Scott, how are you seeing HPE adapt to these dynamic customer needs through these crazy times?
No, it's a super great question. The highest level strategy of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is to focus on edge, focus on hybrid, and focus on data and AI. And then you can sort of break that down below there and you can find this common thread that exists. I support 9 geos, all products, all solutions, all vertical industries. And I found that 80% of the problems are common across every industry and every client. And so our focus strategy allows us to develop automation strategies, hybrid cloud pursuit capabilities, develop landing zones, allow them to choose multi-cloud and deliver multi-cloud capabilities, but at the same time, allow them to enhance their data capabilities across the board, whether that's securing the data or, recovering the data or acting on the data from an insight perspective to be able to use enhanced AI techniques. Edge is the interesting one. Depending on the industry you're in, the edge definition can move outward a long way. I'll give you an example. If you think about a retailer, retailers can pretty definitely say that their edge is the retail store. But, the question you got to ask yourself, is it the retail store? Is it the point of sale? Is it the self-checkout? Is it the associated team member? Is it the mobile app? Is it outside in the parking lot where you pick up? Or is it someone that delivered it to your house? That's a lot of edges. And so we see there's, a high level construct to be able to deliver solutions and capabilities and outcomes to our clients, working with partners like yourself, clearly, to be able to deliver the expertise. Because what you do find is there's a skills gap and there's definitely an expertise gap and able to bring this home to deliver real value.
Yeah, I love that, the idea that, where is the edge, right? It just seems to be always shifting, always changing. Greg, you work with a lot of our strategic clients. How have advancements in technology influenced the roadmaps that you're crafting here at Converge?
Well, Jonathan, I think there's a couple different ways that, the advancements in technology within the industry and within our customers' sort of purview have influenced what we do, right? The first is that we can no longer view our products and services in isolation. Nearly everything is connected and interrelated within an enterprise. And if it's not, it actually has limited value today. So isolated and standalone solutions that, are no longer the norm. Integration and interoperability, both in the short and long term, are key initiatives for our customers, and therefore they're key initiatives for the things that we build. think the second way is that, ROI and time to value have become, king around key performance indicators. Customers are investing with a desire and a need, right, to have value returned to them. So, the rapid advancement and pervasive nature of technology is integrated into nearly everything. And our customers are looking for validated, vetted, and supported platforms on which they can build. They're no longer wanting to start from basic building blocks. They're also making investments to realize, savings and to solve problems. They want to invest, but they want a multiple in return on that. And we try to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind, I'd respond to that. So we have a very similar philosophy as I travel the globe talking to client after client, many thousands of customers. Folks definitely are opting to sort of be out of the system integration business, as Greg was saying. They definitely want more integrated, unified solutions with a common experience. Although there's still bulk buying of discrete components, but lesser and lesser folks want to deliver a true unified experience for sure. And, to expand on the other piece, ROI has been around a long time, and clearly folks need to see a return on their investment. What we found is there is the other eyes, though, return on individual and return on insight. This has become equally important, right, with early career folks and late career folks that exist in organizations, whether it's IT, CDO, CFO, CISO, et cetera, right, being able to, address skills gaps, address experience gaps. So return on individual to make them far more productive is much more paramount now, which is why we see folks opting out of what we call Noah's Ark for IT, choose one of everything and try to integrate it. Best of breed approaches are falling way to integrated approaches because they want higher value for their people. And then on the insight side, right, I coined a term a long time ago, every organization's data rich and insight poor. And so getting value and insight, so time to action on the data, especially at the edge, right? Do I keep it? Do I store it? Do I backhaul it? Do I put it in the cloud? Do I put it in a relational database? Do I batch report on it? Do I throw it away? What's the efficacy of that insight? This is still a struggle point for every organization we have. They just really don't know. And then they end up with this large, tangled mess of storing stuff forever, never archiving, and then later go, why am I doing all this? And so I think it's up to us to help them to make responsible decisions around data usage, but also have great value on their investment, as Greg was saying.
I'll just jump in there real quick, Jonathan, because we also, agree that the individuals in the organization are where the true value is returned back to the organization by leveraging their most valuable asset, right? And that's one reason that the integrated solutions that, were being mentioned are top of mind, right? It allows the individuals to focus on the most important aspects and unique aspects of their business from a technological perspective and remove the responsibility for the undifferentiated, refiguring out sort of the basic blocking and tackling that comes with starting from the, I'll say the component pieces of an environment, and allows them to sort of, jumpstart that initiative and get a better value not only on their investment, but out of their individual team members.
So, as we want, individuals to be more productive, we want higher value for the technology we're putting in place. We're talking about newer systems, right? But unless you just finished your software today and just deployed it now, right? Every organization has legacy software, legacy technology in place. And so digital transformation is paramount to keep up with cybersecurity threats, to keep up with, being more efficient. So when evaluating systems, right, when you walk, Scott and Greg, when you walk in to talk to your clients, where do you see organizations commonly be inefficient in the way that they have things set up?
Yeah, I'll just take a jump at that, Greg, and then pass to you. So I real respectful to all of our clients all the time, trying to coach them in what I call a digital renovation agenda, right? Because everything's brownfield. And so there's a lot of entanglement, a lot of legacy debt, or what we call mode 1, friction-filled hardware defined. And most folks still haven't even achieved full mode 2 software defined frictionless, let alone full hybrid operating model. And so what's tough is, it's not a technology boundary. So even though there's legacy stuff out there, there's a way to cloudify some of that and make it far more automated. It's almost always an organizational boundary. They're simply organized incorrectly to achieve true cloud frictionless capabilities. Yet what's funny about it is if you consume from a hyperscaler, the big three or the big five, you choose nothing and share everything. There is zero chance you can choose anything in an infrastructure capability. It doesn't matter if you want to pay for a secure enclave. You cannot choose. But on premise, when some human can touch it, we choose everything and share nothing times 4 dimensions. And then you end up with this incredible and then best of breed purchasing too, which speaks also to the contrast of integrated solutions, is actually the antithesis of efficiency. You end up with just tool changes and integration efforts, and you create more and more debt, right? So it's this balancing act of like how to cloudify some of the old assets and capabilities that are still going to run the company, while at the same time, what I've referred to as the shift right effect is underway. Most of us have spent our careers working on systems of record, and every industry has those, the SAPs, the Epics, the Meditechs, name them all, right? AT&T billing systems, et cetera. Now we're in systems of engagement and interaction, which is the true edge. And that's where all the data is created. So you got to surround the old stuff, do care and feeding, but cloudify it at the same time. And this is tough because you got, again, late career folks over there who have always done it one way and will tell you it's not possible at all that it will even work any other way, which is completely incorrect. And then early career folks who just want to go so fast and push code out there and, continuous development efforts where they don't know as much about how to run high availability and resilient operations. It's this great balancing act that goes on that we have to coach all of our clients on just to make sure they have a low risk capability.
Yeah, I view it very much the same way, right? I sort of bracketed it into 3 different primary coefficients of inefficiency, right? The first one is the old legacy systems that you already talked about. They're just very difficult to operate, challenging to integrate with. You may be losing knowledge around how those systems work as people advance in their careers or move out of an organization. So that's one place that inefficiency creeps in. I think it's well known that's where it creeps in. Another way that inefficiency creeps into the organization, and Scott touched on this a little bit, is that if you are trying to move too quickly and modernize everything, or always choosing technologies that your organization is unfamiliar with, it's very difficult to become experts overnight on that, especially if you're trying to sort of curate your own platform from, again, the base building blocks of IT. The overhead that exists there as you try to learn that, operate it, and do so efficiently is very challenging. So in aggregate, right, when you look across that spectrum of old and new, everything carries with it a small coefficient of inefficiency. But over time, unless you're, battling that throughout the organization, those small coefficients add up. And it really impacts the organizational efficiency in a dramatic way if you're not careful.
Well, just to build on what Greg said, Jonathan, is every new solution we're putting out is built on the construct of we'll have an abstraction tier, so no knowledge of the underlying infrastructure is needed. That's cloud, right, in definition. API driven, I don't need to know LUNs and LDEV layouts. I don't need to know transport layers. I don't have to, now if someone wants to turn those advanced knobs, we'll give that ability to sophisticated organizations. But more and more folks are saying, you know what, I just don't need to do that anymore. I need to build resilient landing zones that I can do cloud automation on. And so we've built that abstraction tier everywhere. So, and part of it is too, the other aspect of this, it's not even about, the ability to remediate problems. The ultimate goal is I could hire somebody straight out of college who has no working knowledge whatsoever of the company or organization and no working knowledge of the infrastructure layout, Oracle, VMware, name your stack of choice, and they still could deploy. So it's about repeatability, scalability, but it's also about like democratizing that knowledge base to run core services. There's always going to be some expertise in some part of a business that's just pure knowledge. But the rest of the stuff we all run every day, I mean, it's just service catalogs of capabilities that are repeatable and you could orchestrate. And if we would all just allow it to happen, this technology is capable today. And so it is an interesting dynamic we see as folks. I think what maybe is the antithesis of it too, what I find is procurement decision cycles are unaligned. When you buy network, when you buy storage, when you buy compute, when you buy a private cloud suite, they're unaligned. So they end up almost creating the silos because they can never get their whole arms around a program level of thinking.
What key factors should leaders consider about their existing infrastructure before introducing transformation? I mean, you've talked about a lot of different things, right? But where should they be focusing on?
Well, I think one thing that's very important is to keep in mind is that the heritage infrastructure runs the systems of record that power the organization and are responsible for sort of the day-to-day well-being and revenue generation side of things, right? So you have to always carefully consider the historical systems, as we said, right, that are there when you start thinking about a transformational approach to the next thing that you want to do. I don't know what Scott thinks about that, but being we all work in the enterprise, right? The enterprise has a very long tail. It's nice to always think greenfield, but there is no greenfield, right? Everything is a little bit muddied. So
there's two ends of the spectrum. I developed a program which I call ground stop functions. I developed originally for airlines, and then I moved it to retail, energy, production, all these different areas. And you look at the core functions that can run a company or stop a company. And then you build around the capabilities that have to be there. And what's hard about that, there's two ends of the spectrum. On one side, you'd say, I will buy the most resilient infrastructure, 6 nines or better availability, and it's just rock solid, and I'll build a foundation on that. The second school of thought is I'll just develop application resiliency, or maybe I'll develop multi-cloud resiliency. But what we saw is that failed everybody with the CrowdStrike incident. The availability zone didn't work, and the region failed over, and their tier 0 apps were down. So now they're going, hold on, I can't use 3 nines infrastructure anymore. I need 6 or better. And so there's this kind of long tail to this of finding that right level of resiliency, throughput, capabilities, latency, IOP, throughput, et cetera, for those systems of record. But at the same time, not being in denial about they can't be modernized. And I see this constantly. A very famous person, a rear admiral in the US Navy, a mathematician and very famous person, also the namesake for one of NVIDIA's hottest technologies, Mrs. Grace Hopper, said the most dangerous words in the English language is, we've always done it this way. And I see this with mainframes, and I see this with SAP, and I see this with Oracle, and folks will go, I can't ever get off of Oracle because I got procedural language. It's so simple to come off. And so there's this new level of digital transformation is, okay, yeah, we've always done it that way. What is the art of the possible? Then we'll look at the risk factor over it and we'll go in phases to transform. Otherwise, you just end up with the same thing over and over in bubbles.
Yes, but also no. I mean, I think I agree with you, Scott, in principle, right? We can't let perfect be the enemy of good. At the same time, you got a foundational system that is running your business. And that's where all the calculations are sitting, right? It is critical to make sure that when you lift and shift or you train, you change, you get off of whatever that legacy system is, if it's written in RPG, COBOL, whatever, right? It has to work correctly before you do the shift over, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the business process stuff is there, but what I'm saying is, all of us on this call, for every single year we've been in the industry, and I've been in it a long time, as every company saying, I'm going to reduce my mainframe MIPS. And then the next year goes by and I'm going to reduce my MIPS. I'm going to reduce my MIPS. And when they don't reduce their MIPS, they increase their MIPS because they're all caught in this fear thing of if I touch the system of record, somehow I'll disrupt the business until you actually go do the project. And then the next thing I always hear is, how come I didn't do this before? See this just constantly. So those systems of records are the lifeblood of the company. Agree with you 100%, Jonathan, but there's ways to surround them so you've got availability that's more contiguous to the whole organization, because other things are the lifeblood to make a decision that we just don't treat as effectively. And I think that's part of transformation is management of change is really what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's managing change, and it's also ensuring that when you do bring in transformational technology, that you have individuals and people within the company, right, that can focus on that. Very rarely do you look across enterprise IT organizations, whether that be on the application development side or on the infrastructure side, where people are not working at maximum capacity and can just, take on new transformational projects while completely shedding responsibility for the old. That's one of the reasons that the transformation is so difficult, is because just like there's no greenfield, there's no purely unutilized resources within an organization that can just drop everything and take on this new project and bring it to completion within the timeframes that organizations are ultimately started trying to look for. And that's one of the main drivers, I think, that we saw cloud become so popular, is that you could abstract away a lot of responsibility for many of the day-to-day things that cloud was doing for you by giving you managed services and pre-integrated solutions, right, that are effectively creating a tapestry of APIs to accomplish something rather than, again, starting from the basic building blocks.
Greg, to expand on that, sorry, Jonathan, to expand on that, where we got a lot of customers caught now, though, if you look at AWS, the largest hyperscaler on the planet, 68% of everything still sits in an EC2 instance, what we call the cake. So a whole lot of organizations have just moved to the cake because maybe they want to be out of the data center business. Maybe they want to just shift their operational model, and they haven't used the icing yet, the higher level functions. And so on one side, they're afraid to use the higher level functions because they'll be completely and utterly locked to that cloud with no portability. On the other side is if they don't use them, then they're not getting the value out of using a public cloud. They've just got the value out of moving the workload to somewhere else. And so we see people in this balance all the time. And now we're seeing a huge rebalance going on as folks moved it over there, did not have the capability to refactor because the businesses didn't see the value. So there's this delicate dance going on again that we're all going to see a swirl on. And so 100% agree with what you said there. And Jonathan, I did not mean to interrupt you. Apologies.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in just one more time because I think that's an old story, right? That is true for cloud, and it's true for heritage technologies that have been pervasively adopted by the enterprise. I mean, shelfware is a real thing, right? People buy systems and never take advantage of a lot of the capabilities are there, and therefore never get the value out of that investment. It's exacerbated in the cloud when the meter's running, right? And you were pursuing a move then improve strategy, and the move happened, but the improve did not. And now you're almost worse off than you were if you just would have not moved, right? So it's an old song and dance. It just has a different tune depending upon where you're looking or what you're investigating. So
let me see if this is what I've heard, right? Organizations have a hard time getting out of their old systems. They need to move forward, but people are busy doing the things that they've got. And what they expect is as they make moves, as they make changes, adopt new technology, they want to see an acceleration of the ROI that they're getting out of things, right? I think what I hear you saying, right, is the technology, the abstraction layer, the advantages are there, but organizations are inefficient in the way that they're transitioning from where they've been. Oftentimes we're stuck.
I would say encumbered in some ways too, right? Like they're almost shackled. It's like they want to achieve those goals, right? They would like to take that initiative, but the day-to-day, right? And some of the other attributes that we've already identified inhibit that.
A good example of this, Jonathan, is I've had this conversation recently with 12 different clients, totally different industries, different geos, and years onto this. So they were more open to admit this. And you ask them, why'd you choose Exadata? Did you choose it because it was more performant or more available? And they, quietly admitted, no, we went around all the operational boundaries and we consolidated the capability because I couldn't have a storage admin doing this and a DBA and all this. I just went around it all and made it a single. That's cloud to a lot of folks. And so I've got tons of organizations swinging out to public cloud to teach themselves how to run cloud operations to eventually be more cloud smart about putting workloads in right places. So cloud becomes an everywhere thing. And I see this a ton of times. And because without it, there's just no way to get around the disciplined legacy boundaries of how you operate infra. People still do it the same way they've always done it for the last 2 decades, right? I got compute admins, I got VMware admins, I got Oracle admins, Microsoft admins, Linux admins. They're not the same people. And so we see this a lot of like what Greg was talking about. There's this higher level construct where and then they get out there and there's a little bit of buyer's remorse because they weren't able to transform the rest of the way. And then the meter's clicking. And it still doesn't mean you should always use public cloud for the right reasons. And what's changed though is this idea of permanence is not there. And this whole the cloud thing is a weird construct, right? CXOs go, I'm moving to the cloud. What does the cloud mean? It's just this kind of thing, right? And then once organizations realize the operational constraint of there, so now it's changing a lot. So I think it gives us a great advantage, us as partners, to go have legitimate cloud operational automation agenda conversations with all of our clients and achieve what they want to achieve.
Scott and Greg's insight highlight a crucial point. Sometimes the biggest roadblock to transformation is our own mindset. Instead of focusing on the investment and challenges, organizations should be measuring what they will gain through digital transformation. To Scott's point, staying educated on emerging technologies is essential and can help leaders see what's truly possible. Even if your legacy systems feel like a shackle, simplification and automation might be the key to unlocking the future of IT sooner than you think. To see these principles in action, I next asked Greg for a real-world case study. What we need to be doing is enabling individuals within organizations to scale up on some of these newer technologies so they've got time and can make that investment to things that will provide better ROI. And automation is key, right? Simplifying things, abstracting things should make things easier. So what tactics have you used to ensure that simplification is being prioritized by your clients? Scott?
I think you're both hinting at it. There's some level of education or enablement that the art of the possible is within reach and affordable to do and democratize. And I think a lot of people think that, oh man, I could never achieve that. And then when you show them an automation agenda, a self-service portal, a service-centric catalog, and the ability to build landing zones that have repeatability and stuff, they're like, wow, I've been doing this all manual, all constructed in piece parts. And so I think we've reached that technology barrier that's all democratized and totally accessible to every size organization. Because what we also hear all the time is, don't make it for the large financial organizations and I can't do it as an SMB or a commercial account. We need this available to everybody. And I think we've reached that. And I think the same thing has happened in tech for all of us in our careers. If you had to design for a system of record, an Oracle system, you had to go try to figure out which specific, very niche system had enough availability and enough IOPS and enough memory. Well, they all do now. They all do. I mean, I could do many terabytes of memory in a 2U server I can stick on my lap, and it can do 2 million IOPS. It used to be I could only do one thing for that. That was the only system that could do it on the planet. There is no such thing as the only system that can do it on the planet anymore. And so it's made it so much easier to deliver these workload landing zones and these capabilities. And then the automation has come as long as folks will let themselves adopt it. I often find every conversation I've had in the last 2 weeks is folks go, I did not know that was possible right now. They just assume it's just a public cloud possibility. And when you show them it is, they're like, how come I don't have that already? And yeah, totally. A lot of it's that, a lot of it's education.
I mean, does risk play into that as well? Are there are there perceived and actual risks that are holding them back that education would improve, or are there certain challenges they have to navigate?
I mean, risk always has a factor, whether it's compliance risk or regulatory, or just like, hey, I had an impact event before, so I'll never do that again. And we all have long memories for that. But it sort of holds you back from the oversubscription efficiency that technology currently can provide. A simple example. I've had 622 conversations in 18 months around VMware. And you look at these vCPU ratios for oversubscription, what folks would refer to as a blast radius or a fault domain. They're anemic. It's not a capability of the performance of the memory bandwidth. I'm like, double that, triple that, quadruple that. You will save money. You will waste less resources. The automation is there to help you. If something happens to that fault domain, it'll automatically fail over. And they're like, no, I'm just going to do it my old way. I'm going to set it and let it. And so you never do that in cloud. This is why I said taking the principles of what you would do in a public cloud need to be pulled into the colos and everything. And so it's this kind of education thing and this realization where to go, okay, I'm ready. This okay, I'm ready moment is what I find a lot. It takes a while to get a client to the okay, I'm ready to finally give in. And because I need to do something better. Or else you just have underutilized infrastructure everywhere and everyone's sort of complaining they don't have the resources when they need them. And, they spend all their time upgrading firmware and such.
Greg, can you share an example of when, of helping one of our clients through a major transformation and what key lessons that we've learned out of it?
I think so. I'm not going to name the customer because it would be divulging information that's not public, right? But I can sort of characterize the initiative. So we were helping a major transportation company, and their goal was to modernize and migrate workloads to a new platform, but yet retain the value in these heritage systems that we've been talking about that operate their business. In this particular case, right, the customer did choose the cloud, but it involved a two-pronged approach for modernizing. First was to effectively shed the obsolete through a transformational approach and moving towards a modernized set of services that they were, creating new based on functions that the business had to perform. The heritage systems that had to interact with the new systems that they were building were moved to an as-a-service model that allowed them to, again, shed responsibility for the undifferentiated aspects of that platform, make it adjacent to a hyperscaler, and then surround those heritage systems with modern services to extract greater value out of those. And the two-pronged approach helped in a couple of ways, right? Instead of trying to do everything simultaneously, which often, bifurcates the team and, brings inefficiency because you're trying to change too much too quickly, they were able to focus on modernizing systems and services that would benefit the most, right, from adopting new technologies and therefore gain new capabilities. And the systems of record that are serving mission critical data could continue to do so, but they were no longer totally responsible for those systems, and allowed familiarity to be one key component over the overall workload because the amount of change in the environment was reduced by this two-pronged approach. So it was a year-long effort, but highly successful. And we talked about risk, right? Risk mitigation was key because this transportation company moved goods and services throughout the entire country, and the country was dependent upon these things. So risk mitigation, was critical, being in a public sector sort of perspective, and they were able to achieve this without any significant outages of any kind. So it was a super successful. We had a cross-functional team engaged throughout the life cycle, beginning with the very early on assessments, the scoping of work, the approach of, figuring out the migration waves and which applications needed to go simultaneously. All of that was, viewed as a value to this particular customer.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I definitely know a few people that worked on that project. It was something special. Also, just a little bit stressful at times. But yes, I'm sure with critical infrastructure and critical workloads, everybody, pays special attention.
It was, and it was full of all kinds of buy versus build decisions, right? And I never view that as one or the other, right? And in this particular case, it wasn't buy versus build, it was buy and build. But when they did so, right, when they chose to modernize, they chose to modernize around open standards that had been adopted by the industry, so that as they built new services and integrated with the old, when they came to the next round of modernization, they had a blueprint in place, right? That was built around cross-organizational, cross-industry sort of standards that gave them freedom to select vendors and technologies that were aligned around those standards, that gave them that base of interoperability that we've talked about when you go to sort of a monoculture of a cloud, and allowed them to select for things that they were buying and building with confidence. So I think it not only got them through this initial phase, but also set them up well for the future.
Yeah, and it took a lot of collaboration across the organization to get aligned and to have those conversations, right? Making that transition was not just a technological change, but it was a cultural change. It was a paradigm shift, right?
It was. And I'll say the other thing, right? It was invigorating for the team. There was excitement from the team sort of holistically, because the new technologies were of interest, right? And progress was being made, right? So people were excited about it. Sometimes you see organizations go through a transformation and there's a lot of trepidation and concern and, overplaying the risk and not realizing that, it's a risk reward sort of an equation. I think Scott alluded to that, right? If you're 100% risk focused, there's no reward to be had either, right? So it's a balance, just like the buy versus build. There has to be a balance in the approach. Without any risk, there is no reward. So
yeah, it's a little bit of, it's both and, right? You need to have change, but you need to understand the legacy and make the right decisions for the organization. And sometimes
without change, it's obsolescence, right? And that is not going to cement the future of any organization. Obsolescence is the slow and absolutely assured path to no longer being in existence, right?
I think that's the last thing an organization wants. So where do we go from here? I mean, I think we've hit on this, right? The digital transformation is just as much as a cultural shift that is a technological one. And it's critical that you've got, buy-in from an organization. So Scott, how have you seen organizational culture impact execution? And what advice do you have for leaders they come up with strategy to ensure that adoption happens?
Yeah, no, I totally everything Greg talked about, I resonate with it. I was inferring to the similar principles before. I find that these digital transformations now, which sometimes have become digital AI transformations, just when you didn't have your digital transformation done, now you have to transform some more. They require transparent leadership. You said the word in there in the beginning comments. Without it, you will super struggle to achieve the business value. You might transform some technology and modernize, and everyone should be doing that for lots of reasons. But it takes full view sponsorship to do true transformation. And without it, though, there's always the antibodies in the system that will resist. And that once the resistance starts happening, it takes too long, and pretty soon the projects are really overrun, and the businesses are starting to get really stressful and nervous and antsy in their seats. So this is this orchestration. You talked about it, of mapping the risk profile, the ability to see what the reward is, to be able to clearly articulate the reward, whether it's a business outcome reward, a performance reward, a cost reward, whatever that is, operational excellence. And I find that those are always successful. The ones where you've got people trying to pull against it and not make the transformation a unified effort, you can get mild success, but not really holistically. And there's no one answer. I wish there was, because the ingredients or DNA of every one of these organizations we all call on have a lot of different legacy, usually a product of many acquisitions, which makes it even harder, as we all know. But I think it's about great leadership and a unified vision to make transformation super effective.
I think it's also important to have realistic goals, right? And objectives. Sometimes those can become skewed, right? To the point of selling the transformation with goals that are absolutely unattainable. It might get the organization to buy in and to make the move, but there's disappointment at the end of that, right? So be realistic around the goals, cut it into phases, right? Not every part of the project. You don't have to, what do you say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't have to take on the entire transformation in one fell swoop, right? That is probably not the recipe for success. And along the way, you learn continuously, right? Sometimes you learn what not to do, but if you can course correct along the way, those are still valuable things. Even if your, ultimate goal was not fully realized, there is value in some setbacks to help you sort of rethink what you may be doing or were planning to do and sort of reevaluate these goals and objectives that we've talked about.
In our delivery, right, we do definitely lean into the agile methodology, right? Or, we've got in some ways, we have a wagile type approach, right? We know where we're going usually, but we are focused on making sure that we're iterating and producing ROI at a regular interval and constantly being willing to reevaluate as we learn new things, as new things emerge and as technology changes. So it is definitely important to have that roadmap, to get that buy-in from the organization, but also be flexible.
What's been proven too, Jonathan, is that the best digital leaders have dozens or hundreds of mini transformations happening simultaneously versus focus everything on one singular, large, expensive project. Because as Greg was saying, eventually along the way, there'll be some setbacks or one way or another, timeline setbacks or something. And so you can get little wins along the way. We also find that in a lot of the start of many of these transformation projects are finding a way to do self-funding. A little win that propels the transformation that you want by solving something tactically that all still exists. There's just a lot of run problems in companies that they still have the daily operations on. If you can solve some of those, they'll get the appetite and the confidence. So it's a bit of a confidence thing that happens, as Greg was saying, of that continuous learning. Once you get a little bit of satisfaction and confidence under you, it'll propel the team to move forward and you can see the end goal. It will be in phases. There's no doubt about it. We see this a lot. And it's, like you said, and you mentioned this before, it's pretty motivating for all the teams involved once you do a big transformation like you guys described.
It's almost as if as an organization is continuing to iterate and move forward, you need to have an ROI flywheel, right? Where it's not that you're necessarily looking to get to the end and see the ROI. You need to be measuring it along the way. You need to be constantly calculating, recalculating decisions, the benefits, so that, and then making that transparent to everybody else, right? So that people do see the value that is coming from a new implementation, a new transformation. In those little, seeing the value within each of the steps so that it does start to generate excitement and can then catalyze greater change.
I often ask myself as I get involved in many of these, as the two of you do as well, I try to go do the forensics of how the customer got stuck for so long. It's an interesting list because sometimes you'll stumble into these and you're like, wow, the 90s are calling and want their technology back. And you're like, okay, I can see being a couple gens behind, right? Because, maybe it's not the value to transform, but some of this stuff is so legacy and being held together with incredible risk to it. So the risk associated with running it in the old way is far greater than the risk of transforming. So the cost of inaction equation that you can play out for when you can get to the right constituents within a client where they look at it and go, we can't do that anymore. We just can't. And until somebody says that, it's hard to get the momentum or the snowball rolling, right? But so it's pretty cool how these things all turn out. But at the end of the day, everybody would love to be more modern and more transformed. It's just there's a lot of barriers to get there sometimes.
I feel like this has been a great conversation, gentlemen. As we are winding this down, any other final thoughts?
I would say that if you embark on a transformation project and there aren't setbacks or pivot points that you encounter or unknowns that creep in, right, you probably waited too long to begin. And we're stuck in a little bit what Scott said was analysis paralysis. And when you do hit the unforeseen, balance that against the inaction, right, that would have had to result from, sort of fully analyzing your path forward, right? And there is definitely a cost to that. The second thing is, it's easier to begin if you can set some foundational primitives. And one of those, I think, that we've talked about is using engineered systems, choosing systems that are built on top of standard technologies that have an interoperability path, choose trusted vendors and choose trusted partners, and seek guidance along the way. Going it alone has an opportunity cost as well. There, you have to learn a lot more on your own and try to figure out things that others have already conquered. So always go hand in hand with somebody that you trust. That would be my sort of closing thoughts.
To build on that too, Greg, I would say sometimes I see too, if there aren't a few setbacks, and I'm not talking speed bumps that wreck cars here, but a few setbacks, then probably your transformation goals, the sights were set too low. And so then you've just done this iterative step and you're going to be facing it again in too short of a timeline. And so sometimes you need to reach farther than what's capable and then just pull a one notch back. And I find that folks are so conservative, right? At times they're just like, well, I don't really know. Like, go for it. We have confidence. So it takes this voice or chorus of confidence voices, whether it's an integrated solution or the expertise you guys bring to say, nope, we've done this before. We can make it happen for you and you can get there and reach farther than what they were planning for in their transformation. So I see that as well.
Indeed. Excellent advice. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you spending this time with us. When it comes to digital transformation, sometimes the greater risk lies in standing still. Transformation isn't just about technology. It's about having the right foundation, the right mindset, and a blueprint that ensures every move you make is a step toward a more agile, future-ready enterprise. Thank you for tuning into this episode. For more information, visit our website at convergetp.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Edge of IT on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.